Six Nations 2026, folks, is here, and France and Ireland are kicking us off this Thursday. Unusual one, but the scheduling is what it is with other events going on from Paris. And the Irish, I don't know, are they being written off? It feels a bit like it. Andy Farrell's been told this is going to be challenging for you, and he keeps saying, well, you guys keep telling us that. I think both teams are pretty good. We've got number 4 against 5 in the world. This one sets the benchmark potentially for how the tournament is going to go. It's currently kind of seen as a bit of a 3-horse race between England, Ireland, and France. But man, the Six Nations never usually goes in a totally predictable manner. Let's go through the two sides which have been named for this Thursday's clash. The French and the Irish, the recent history between the sides, some key stats from what they showed us last year and what we might look out for this. And you guys can let us know your thoughts on how it is going to go. France, 5 in the world. A number which is kind of seen as a little bit misrepresentative, like they bleed points at times when they don't, or they're unable to pick their top team in the middle of the year, like they lost 3 from 3 against the All Blacks last year. The world rankings don't care about whether you send your A, B, or C team. So they've bled some world rankings points, so maybe it's a little bit of a false one. Ireland's points total is pretty static, but they have been passed by England in recent times, so it's 4 against 5, although the French, the lower ranked side, as I said, are pretty heavily favoured for this one. But we'll get to the predictions in a second. They have had, obviously, some disruptions in the build-up. Most squads had. But Uini Atonio's cardiac incident is certainly a massive disruption in terms of the morale of the side. Obviously, they'll be wanting to play well in honour of him, but his, health has obviously been, front and centre for many of the French fans, and I'm sure many of his teammates as well. But, we wish him all the best in his recovery. But it does mean they are missing a big kind of pillar of that French scrum, who's been their premier choice guy for such a long time. They've got Gros, Marchand, and Aldegheri as their front row, which is very much the same as the last time they ran out at the end of last year, although Aldegheri gets a start at tight head. And then the locks, they've kind of gone back to this duo of lock loose forward guys of Guillard and Olivon. Like Olivon plays more loose forward than he does lock, but he plays lock sometimes for his club, and he played lock against Fiji recently. So, yep, Galtier sees him as a bit of a Swiss Army knife. He can do both, and likewise Guillard, came down to New Zealand on that tour and played number 8, but then played lock in other games, played anything against South Africa. So another one who's, neither of these guys are like specialist locks, but they do have Ardo and Meafu on the bench. So Galtier's got some locks to bring on. He's got some big beef in the squad, but certainly Olivon and Guillard, in terms of traditional locks, are a bit more mobile than maybe the likes of a big unit Meafu. Of course, I'm really happy to see his return in the number 6 jersey, because he hasn't played for France since the Six Nations last year. I feel like he does that kind of dirty tackling, not sexy stuff role really well. Rucks and tackling and turnovers, the stuff which doesn't really make highlight reels but elevates the team as a unit. I think his return in that role is an important one. I think they've been missing him in other games last year. Gigoux and Gelon are there. Obviously, Aldrit's omission from the entire squad was a little bit of a surprise, but Gelon is also a good player who can fill a bit of that dynamic role. And then they've also, as I said, spread the load a little bit with the locks being a bit more dynamic than usual. Then we get a whole new 9-10 combo as well. Dupont is back. Return of Dupont. Good times. The last time we saw him play for France was against Ireland in last year's Six Nations. So it has been a while since we've seen Antoine don the French jersey. He is captain for this one. I'll be keen to see how many minutes he plays, whether they shift him to number 10 at any point, because they were doing a little bit of that at the start of last year, putting him at 10 at the ends of games. And he's there alongside Jalibert. Jalibert, who's a guy that I think a lot of French fans would be saying has been the premier French 10 for quite a while. ahead of Intermac, but Intermac was the guy always getting picked. Intermac being injured means it's the Antoine Dupont and Matthew Jalibert combo. I, for one, am excited to see how they go, even if they don't have the club dynamic that like Dupont and Intermac have. Midfield of Moefana and Deporter is also very exciting. Deporter has been scoring a load of tries in the top 14 this year, so it's a very attacking-minded midfield. Bielbiere was almost like a cheat code last year in the Six Nations with his try-scoring runs, especially chasing grubber kicks. Atisogbe has got a bit of pressure on him with Pinot not in the squad. But he's a quick player, and then Ramos, who's been a regular top points scorer in the Six Nations for the last few years, continues on in his usual 15 spot, although there was a Six Nations, was it a year or two ago, that he played 10 regularly? But he's at fullback. Replacements, Melvaca, it's a pretty good replacement to have at hooker. Neti and Montagna, then Orado and Miafu, plus Nushi is there, so it's only 2 backs on the bench, with Serrant being back in the squad, which is some good news for the veteran. He's another one that top 14 fans have been screaming for reselection for a wee while. And then Gorguet, the guy who got his debut at the end of last year, looks pretty quick and exciting there on the bench too. So that is the French squad, who are the favourites for the Six Nations, even if Galtier is bringing in a few youngsters, has the return of a few veterans, and is missing a few of those kind of other veterans, the likes of Fiku, Aldrit, Pinot and whatnot, who have fallen out of favour. If you want French gear, by the way, check out the Six Nations shop down in the description. They have even got All Blacks gear in there for some reason, but yeah, check out the store or shop. They're an affiliate of the channel. Link down in the description. Ireland have also been forced to make a few changes. Your props. You're missing some props, Ireland. Lochman, Sheehan, and Clarkson. That is the starting front row. So Sheehan is the obvious guy to pick in the number 2 jersey, but he didn't have Lochman and Clarkson alongside him the last time he started a test for Ireland. The last time Jeremy Lochman started for Ireland, I think, was Fiji back in 2022. So it's a wee while since we've seen him, but he'll be chomping at the bit to show Andy what he can do at test level. And then Thomas Clarkson, you know, he's started for Ireland. He started in the November period, so he's still a fairly young man in propping terms, so it's going to be a good test for him with Furlong being out at the moment. But yeah, your loose heads in particular seems like a proper injury ward, so that is going to be a real test, not just for this game, but for the Six Nations ongoing. But it's not a bad thing, I think, for Ireland to build a bit of depth in that area, and there's been a lot made of the South African game at the end of last year. South Africa's scrum was on another level from everybody else. So, yeah, I think this game is going to be its own thing in that regard. And then Joe McCarthy back in the second row. Dude is a unit, so he's certainly going to help out at scrum time. You know, help out his front rowers with some big bulk as the big tight headlock. So I'm pretty pleased to see his return. Burns going to have some pressure on him to be winning turnovers at the breakdown, because I don't think the Irish turnover 1 count is incredibly high, but he is certainly a specialist in that area. And then Cian Prendergast, I'm likewise chuffed for him. Obviously, Ryan Baird being out injured is unfortunate, but it does force Andy Farrell's hand to give someone else a crack. And in this case, it is Cian Prendergast. He does a bit of everything, man. He wins turnovers, he wins line-up ball, makes heaps of tackles, gets the odd break in the line. So yeah, pleased to see how he goes. High work rate alongside Josh van der Fleer and captain Caelan Doris, who'll be looking to put some meters on, especially with that kind of big old leg drive of his. 9-10 combo, it's the Leinster duo of Gibson Park and Prendergast. So the question still remains, I mean, Gibson Park's alongside Sheehan and Doris, like, you know, first names off the team sheet kind of pick, but 10's still that question mark. You do have Crowley on the bench. Harry Burns been putting his hand up at Leinster. So 10 for Prendergast, it was I don't think that was a sure thing kind of pick. And as long as the forward pack is able to get some go forward, he can do things to spark that back line. But if I was France, I know they don't like to talk about it. Andy Farrell doesn't like being asked questions about it, but I'd be sending ball carriers down Prendergast's channel all day long. Hope he's worked on his tackling. He's still a young man. He still probably hasn't even filled out fully in terms of his body, but it's certainly an area that other coaches will be aware of. But then you've got your own battering ram player in McCloskey at 12. Love watching him. I love it. I know Arky's suspended. Henshaw's injured, but McCloskey and Ringrose, I don't mind it at all. send McCloskey up the guts all day and make the other team worry about their 10 missing tackles, because Jelly Bear's tackle stats can be pretty average at times too. So get McCloskey to run at Jelly Bear. He's a big man. Ringrose is the all-round kind of skill set guy. Tommy O'Brien's been one of my players that impressed me most. Like last year, what a find in terms of a guy who can just step up at international level and look the business, and the number 14 jumper. But then Jacob Stockdale, the 11 jumper in the Six Nations. Geez, we haven't seen that in a long time as well. So no James Lowe. I thought James Lowe was a shoo-in in terms of that big boot of his. I thought they would be kicking it down France's throat all day long. I mean, I know Stockdale can kick, and he's, like as Andy Farrell said, he can beat a defender. But, yeah, I would have thought Lowe's kicking game would have been a kind of conservative Andy Farrell pick, but nope, he's gone for McCloskey. He's gone for Stockdale. Both guys who can beat tackles, and then, yeah, they've had to make a call at fullback with Hugo Keenan's thumb injury. It means Jamie Osborne gets his first game of rugby in quite some time. So there's, yeah, a few changes enforced on Andy Farrell, but I don't think it's all as doom and gloom as what people are making out. I think it's a side which can put in a good shift. Kelleher, Milne, and Beelum, those are your front row replacements. So Milne obviously got a bit of a crack during the mid-year tests last year, but this will be a step up for him in the Six Nations against France. James Ryan as your replacement lock, another big physical dude to potentially help out at scrum time as well. Just needs to keep the discipline in check. Jack Conan, and then Nick Timoney. So just two forwards on the bench, two backs on the bench as well for Ireland. I love Nick Timoney. He's another one that I think is a little bit underrated, or at least doesn't get picked as much. But you guys have lots of loose forwards in Ireland, so I can kind of understand it. But I expect him to bring a bit of physicality as well. And then Craig Casey and Jack Crowley, the two back replacements. So it's handy having guys like Crowley who can cover a couple of positions, and Ringrose who can slot in many positions, Jamie Osborne likewise. So that does give Andy Farrell a bit more leeway to kind of pick just the two backs. I promised some stats. Ireland, of all the Six Nations team, well, if you thought your line-out wasn't the best, you did have legit the worst line-out completion rate of all of the Six Nations sides across last year. So that certainly needs to be improved. It needs to be an attacking platform, not lost possession. And France had the best of all the Six Nations teams last year across their 2025 season. But Ireland do have slightly better discipline than France. They conceded fewer penalties. France conceded a few more, not horrendously more, a penalty or two more per game. So when you're away from home, you obviously want to keep the penalty count low, especially if Ramos is on form kicking threes. And Ireland are still playing that kind of high passing game. France quite happy to live without the ball. So it's kind of a clash of styles in some ways. If Ireland want to hog the ball and just keep pushing it through the hands, France a little bit more happy to kick and chase. So we'll see which style wins out on the day. Recent history between the sides, it is 3-2 for France, but the last two results have been away wins. A couple of years ago, Ireland were not given a lot of chance away in Marseille, and they got a pretty emphatic win, 38-17. And then last year, France had already lost to England and were kind of being written off. They had to go to Dublin and win, and they did, 42 points to 27. So there's been a couple of big upset wins, which is why I find it hard that people are already writing Ireland off for this one. But previous games have kind of gone a little bit more to the script. Like in 2023, it was a home win in Ireland for the Irish. 2022, it was a home win in France for the French. So, yeah, then there's a 2021 win for the French in Dublin. So there's 3 of the 5 games have been away wins. So I'm not sure how much I read into that in terms of it being the definitive factor between the teams. But anyway, average score is 27-25 to the Irish. There's only a handful that are kind of close. There's been a few blowouts in recent times. Bookies have got the Irish as big-time underdogs. They're saying France by 12. There's a fair bit of money going on France, whereas the Rugby Forecast algorithm is maybe a little bit more with the way I'm inclined to think. I think it'll be a bit closer than that. They're saying by 5. Still France as the favourites. It is on up in Paris. It's down if you're from Dublin, I suppose. It's in Paris. It's on at 9:10 local time. I think it's an hour earlier for you guys in Ireland, like 8:10 at night. It's 9:10 in the morning for those of us in NZ, and it's a public holiday on Friday because it's a Thursday game for you guys over in Europe. So if you're a Kiwi looking for something to do on Friday morning, you could do worse than watching this clash of the Titans. If you think you know the predictions, by the way, I've got a Super Brew pool for Six Nations, free game. Put your predictions in, which team do you think is going to win and by how much. But yeah, Carl Dixon is the ref. I feel like he's one of the English refs that doesn't speak any French. I don't know. We'll see how he goes. Hopefully we're not talking about him at the end of the game. France against Ireland should be a really interesting match. I am very much looking forward to it. You guys let us know your thoughts. Do you think all this doom and gloom talk about Ireland being on the decline is true and France are going to give them a walloping? Or do you think Ireland are still a good team and can give France a bit more of a run for their money? Let me know your thoughts. Take care of yourselves, folks, and I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.